Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Play Like a
What's up?
They. I'm Monica, Money.
I'm Sarah. I always cut you off at that point. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. That's okay. We're doing, we're doing the thing. I hope everyone's having a great week so far.
Hmm.
We're going to talk about, I'm excited about this topic today. It's a complicated one for
It
sure.
is very nuanced.
Very nuanced, but can be very fun and exciting. For
Hmm.
me, I think I think about the exciting parts for sure, but there are hard parts. We are going to talk about, gender fluidity, gender expression, exploration, within being an athlete in your sports career, but also beyond that, because, we don't stop being non-binary after we
Right.
stop playing competitive sports. So this, just definitely creeps into all parts of life for sure, in the best way. But there are challenges, so we wanted to talk about it and talk about our experience in that. But yeah, anything you have to add, Sarah?
Absolutely. No, I think I'm excited for this conversation because I think sports in general is a safer place for a lot of people to express themselves,
Mm-hmm.
period. And so then bringing like on top of that what gender expression feels like, I think is just it's going to be a fun conversation.
Yeah, gender expression,
Yeah.
man, gender euphoria.
Mhm. Yeah,
So good. It's so good.
absolutely.
Yeah, it is. Sports really is like, for me, was like a safer space to kind of explore a little more. I know you've talked about how softball is a very like femme
Hmm.
sport. Basketball, I would say the opposite.
Hmm. Yeah.
Which made it very comfortable for me, to be honest, because when I'm a little more like fluid with it now, but for a long time I really like being more masculine was where I felt more myself. Because I just wanted to like totally reject the womanhood within me because it didn't feel right, like that was the
Yeah.
vibe. That was the vibe, the
Hmm.
tomboy vibe. Um, which worked for me at the time, but I think, feeling a little more like I could explore and do both and do everything and figure out what I like, would have been really nice. And I hope that that's happening more now. But I think that like kind of trying to fit in one box, like a femme or mask box, definitely happens a lot. And in sports, it's so binary that that can be definitely a default for sure.
Absolutely. And I think, sports is interesting too because as I just said, I think it's definitely a place where people can feel fully expressed in their body. And also I think large in part sports are a place where it is about connecting to your body just because of like
Facts.
the nature of it, right? It's the physicality, like it's the technique, it's, you know, where you're going to go, who you're going to pass to, how you're going to hit the ball, hand-eye coordination, foot-eye coordination. It's just like connection in the body.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really cool lesson to learn because I think, well, I know that because of these like oppressive systems that we live under, it's all in our like brain. Like we are programmed to think like, okay, if I look a certain way, this is going to happen, or if I
Yeah.
present a certain way, or if I act a certain way, XYZ will happen,
Yep.
right? And I think that a lot of people like logic these things, and for fear
Yeah. Oh my
reasons,
gosh.
for
Yeah.
there's so many reasons for that.
Yeah.
um and I think sports is also a really cool place because I think like athletes have a lot more connection to their body to allow themselves to feel other parts of themselves that don't necessarily have to do with like the specific game stuff. Like,
Yes.
am I feeling this way towards another person? How do I want to present? What do I feel like when I put on, these pair of pants versus the other pair of pants? What do I
Yeah.
feel like when and I think that's a really interesting conversation too, and brings in this like gender fluidity
Yeah.
uh exploration, excuse me, which I think is really cool, and which was I think my experience too, is
Yeah.
playing sports not only was my outlet, the ability to learn how to connect to my body, but also like I was this like, well, why can't I play boys lacrosse? Like why can't I go out
Yeah.
there and like hit people? Why can't I like be physical in games? And that was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I leaned really far into that. And I think that allowed me to be like, well, I'm wearing this because I feel most comfortable in it. And I'm wearing this because like, why can't I? Like the guys are wearing
The
it. No
guys are
one's saying
wearing it.
anything to them.
Oh my
So it
God.
was like this whole,
Yeah.
thing.
All the things the guys are doing.
Hmm. Yeah.
I could. I know. And it's like with basketball, I was like, I play with guys all day long. I play with men all day long. And then why aren't we playing? Like it was just, and I play with men with a men's ball, a men's basketball all day long. And then you know, like what is that? What is it? Still exists. And just like all the things. And I remember getting technical fouls for not being ladylike. Like that was the
Oh,
reason, because we said a
are you,
swear
wait, are
word.
you
Yeah, I'm serious.
like,
I'm so
like,
serious. I'm so serious. Because
I've
I
never
said a
heard that
swear
before.
word and like the men did it all the time, but like Texas, Um, yeah, just like but I love what your face right now. It's just like, what?
Mind blown.
Yeah, just speechless. Speechless. Yeah, it's like that, that I love what you said about connecting with your body because I think that's like a huge part too is you're already so connected with it because you're doing something so physical but also so connected with your brain, and I know we like logic our way through so many things including like for me gender expression and fluidity, but when I'm playing sports, specifically basketball, I didn't really logic my way through anything, which is funny because there's strategy. There's definitely strategy, but I would like
Mhm,
I know the strategy, so I would just like feel through it. And like it's just some of it's automatic. You have that like court vision, you have like you see other people, you like
mhm,
know how they move. It's like a very like like a very like intimate thing in a way. And I think like, the fact that I could like explore more with my gender when I was playing sports because it gave me that more like masculine spectrum to play with as
mhm,
well.
mhm.
Um, Felt really supportive, which I think is like
Yeah,
a side benefit of it
yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. You know what I was just thinking about? Because I've
No.
seen you post on your Instagram a lot of, like, painting
Yeah.
and,
Love
like,
painting.
art,
Yeah.
and I do art too, and not that this is necessarily has anything to do with sports, although it could.
I think, yeah.
I find personally that I lean I'm able to lean more into that what you said, like, masculine spectrum
Yeah.
of, like, physicality or what is, like, traditionally seen as, like, masculine physicality,
Yeah.
and I in my art, I feel like that is a very, like, soft,
Ooh,
um,
yeah. Just even the
outlet
brush.
for
Yeah.
me.
Yes.
Yeah, and
That's
it
so
like,
true.
let me go
Even the
like
brush
this, right?
strokes.
And it's
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it feels good. Um, so I was just thinking about, like, fluidity and that, and what I have noticed is there's a lot of, like, you know, female in, like, women's athletics in general that actually have a very creative side of them. Like, I've known professional soccer players who are professional artists as well, and,
That's cool.
they professional basketball players who are very much into, like, style and,
Yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah.
fashion,
Yeah.
right? And not that, the men's side doesn't experience those same things, but I find that really interesting with, like,
Mm.
women's athletics in particular. So
Yeah.
that just made me think of that.
Basketball's big into style and fashion. There's always
Yeah.
the fit walk-ins and things like that when they're coming into the arena and
Yes.
stuff. It's like
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
Definitely. But I feel that too. And I think it's something like I loved art when I was a kid, but I think it's something that I've cultivated um again as an
Mhm.
adult is like that soft side because I think for a long time it was just like really like leaning into that hard side like for a
Yeah,
long
yeah,
time
yeah,
and not incorporating a softer side but also not feeling like I could at the same time. It was like I always have to be like resilient, I always have to be tough, I always have to be these things, which I hate being resilient. That's like
I know.
I
It's so
don't
hard
I
sometimes.
don't like it. I don't like it at all. I think it's all bullshit. And it shouldn't even be a compliment. Like, it's just don't like it. We should all just be soft. We should all be able to just be soft.
Yeah.
That would be so great. But yeah, I mean, I think it's like it's even like footwork, like hearing about like soccer players and football players and probably other sports too, like doing dance, like even like softer dance because it
Yes.
helps with like footwork and that like dichotomy and those two sides of things, not everything, but of some things.
Yeah, and, like, soft hands.
Yeah.
Like, in basketball,
Yeah.
softball, like,
Shooter's
soft
touch.
hands, like
Shooter's touch.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like,
Yeah.
that's a really, like, interesting take on gender fluidity in sports in general
Yeah.
because I think, when we think of the masculine, we think of, like,
Yeah.
tough," like, and then we think of, like, the feminine, we think of, like, soft and gentle and
Yeah.
lovely, and sure, there are truths to both sides, and also, like, they can also flip-flop, and I think everyone should
Yeah.
be able to, or at least my hope is in this world is that everyone learns how, to balance both sides. I think
Yeah.
we need to, as a nation, we need to be softer with each other in general, um,
That's a good
but
point
it's an
with the like
interesting
yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, that's okay. It's just, like, interesting to think about, like, even in the physicality of sports and the technique of
Yeah.
sports, it's still, like, okay, go hard in the paint, but, like, have soft hands and a shooter touch, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
dude, I was just thinking that how interesting that is, or like, when, you go to the ball when you catch it, but you like kind of let it like fall and you're not gonna like go to
Yes.
the ball and like hit it like that,
Mhm,
It's like you let it like
mhm.
fall into you, even though you're like proactive in it. It's like very interesting. But yeah, it's like, I love it. I love the fluidity of it all, and that's the thing is even though we're talking about, like, the soft side and maybe the more, like, harder aggressive side, that doesn't necessarily mean it's, like, feminine and masculine or, like, men and women, and
Mm.
I think that's also, like, a big thing is it's not, like, either or. It's not like we're
Right,
stepping
it's
into an
both
either
and.
or bucket. Yeah, exactly. It's both
Mhm.
and being able to, like, incorporate all of the versions of that, like, within myself is something I'm still exploring for sure, and
Mhm.
being able to, walk outside and be like, "Oh, I'm," like, "This is the version of, non-binary that I am today, and then I'll be another version tomorrow, or I'll be this version for a year or a week," or, like, it's whatever I want it to be, and, like, figuring out, that how I choose to express my gender doesn't change my gender because I think sometimes it's like, that identity that I had even during sports versus a post and now being like, there ways I can express it that doesn't change my gender just because people will perceive me differently, most likely.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. I was because I this was, like, in a therapy session, like, months ago, months, like, maybe a year ago at this point, but I was talking about, like, but what is that like, if that person thinks of me this way or, perceives other people a certain way, like, what does that say about me?
Yeah.
And I was having a really hard time with this, and my therapist was like, "Well, like, how do you identify? Like, how do you feel?" And I was like, "Well, I'm non-binary and all of this," and she was like, "Well, then that's, like, what you always are, like, that's yours. No
Yeah.
matter what, like, you know that you are that."
Yep.
And I was like, "Yeah, yes, that is mine,
That is
and that
mine.
is never gonna, like, not be me or not be mine,
Yep.
regardless of what other people, like, perceive you as." I
Yeah.
love that.
Oh, it's the best. Side note,
Mhm.
I went out last night, and I was out and I was getting a drink and someone walked past me. This man walked past me and he said, "Excuse me, young man." And it was kind of the best thing.
Hell yeah.
It was the best thing ever. I was like, "Excuse me." Excuse me, sir. Oh, so good. I love it. I love when there's like I don't know. I don't want to say it's just not obvious. I kinda love when it's not
Mhm,
obvious. I think that's what it is.
mhm,
When it's like
mhm.
I'm not like, people aren't making like, of obviously that's an assumption, but but it didn't feel like an assumption because it's not how I'm misgendered usually, I guess, is why it didn't
Sure,
feel like that. Yeah, I
sure,
was like, "This is okay, cool, yeah."
sure.
So yeah, that's, the perception out there, being perceived and how it can come about, which is, yeah, nuanced and interesting every day.
It is, it
Yeah.
is. You said something earlier too, and this has to do with, like, perception but, like, I think it's easy for us to talk about, like, we're non-binary and all
Mm.
because I think when people, like, look at us, at least look at me,
Oh,
there is,
yeah.
like, an automatic assumption of, like,
Yeah.
what my sexuality is and like what my preferences are,
Same. Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I I also I hope that this podcast and us having these conversations is like, just because you maybe somebody perceives you, audience member, as like super femme, for example, doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that you aren't what you say you are.
Yeah.
And like, yes, we can't control other people's perception of us. And yes, we can own our own gender identity and gender expression and sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And it still doesn't change the fact that it can be hurtful and make you feel invisible when you are misgendered,
Mm-hmm.
misrepresented, misperceived.
Yeah.
So I also want to say that too.
Yeah. It's so true. And it's like everyone's experience is different, and where,
Mm-hmm.
where that lies on our own, like, how that impacts our own identity for sure.
Totally.
And I've been
Totally.
learning about myself, when it hurts and when it doesn't, and when it's okay, and like,
Yes.
like it's very interesting. And then we were talking, I know we talk about a lot of the time like women's sports, and but also, within this topic of like exploring your gender identity and expression in a very binary world of sports, like, there's the men's side of it too, and men are, exploring their gender identity, or should be able to, in a supportive environment. And, I don't have that experience, but I can, from seeing and, being around men's athletics, I don't think that it's at all very like supportive of that exploration. So that's another side of it too. There's two binaries, and all the lack of support around that gender fluidity as exists in both.
Absolutely. Just, I think a lot of people say this if you're in that sort of like TikTok and Instagram world where you're like unlearning a lot of ways where people systemically oppress other people. But the patriarchy like hurts men also,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
It's like they aren't impervious to the toxic masculinity
Yeah.
that exists within it. And I think men's sports is a great example of that, um, because they do deserve to be able to explore their gender identity and
Yeah.
their gender expression. And I think finally are seeing little by little more,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote, male athletes come out and say, I'm non binary, I'm gay, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm this, and also like a professional athlete.
Yeah.
Um,
And be
but I
soft.
wish that,
Like, use
yeah, be
that softness,
soft.
yeah, that we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier.
So I hope that I hope that for them. I think it's a harder in a lot of different ways
Yeah,
for people who play on the men's side,
yeah,
to do that.
yeah. Oh, man, I just want everyone to be exploring their gender, it's so great.
I know. It
It's so
is. It
great.
is.
And we can be so supportive of each other, as athletes and former athletes and
Hmm.
coaches and enthusiasts and everyone who participates in the sports realm, because if more people are open and supportive, then I feel like, as it goes, as us talking about it more on this podcast, and hopefully people talking about it more because of it, and then because of other things like people, just people accepting it more in the sports world, because there's also the fandom of like people who don't accept those things too. So it's not just like in the world of how we exist within teams and programs and things like that. It's also like fandoms, and how people feel about being able to come out and be accepted.
Yeah. I think that's a
Yeah.
period on that.
Yeah. It's a period on
Yeah.
that. But I want to, for me, shout out to sports growing up, giving me that kind of like masculine spectrum option to really like explore more, and getting me to a spot where I can be a little more fluid, and hopefully more so like even in the future. But it was a big
Yeah.
part of me feeling like safe to do so and feeling accepted to do so. And like, I'll definitely, basketball specifically, and we'll always give it the big the big props that it deserves when it comes to me and my
Yeah.
gender.
Absolutely. I echo that 100%.
Hundy P.
Hundo P.
Hundo P. Hundy P. I think both
I like
work.
Hundi P too.
Both work. Both work. Oh
Yeah.
man. Well, any last thoughts before we close this one out?
Um, I also love what you said about like I am this today and I'm exploring this today and tomorrow like I might be exploring something different. I
Yeah.
think growth in that way is so beautiful and so healthy, and I hope people feel like they can, especially within sports and playing and being physical, like feel that inside them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That connection to our body through sports is like I loved that you brought that up. So I love that point and how much it's probably connected me with just, yeah, being able to be in tune with other parts of me that aren't involved in the sport that I play. It's very cool.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
Love it. Love
Yay.
sports.
Love sports. We love
Sports.
sports. That's why we're here.
We love
We
them.
love them so much. As always, thank you, Sarah, for being here for this dope conversation. I love them all.
I love it. You too.
Yeah. And yeah, everyone, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Or if you haven't, play like a day on YouTube. We're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Yeah, and follow us on IG.
And
Play like
follow
a
us on
day.
Instagram.
Yeah, at Play Like a Day. We'll see you in any of those spots. Please leave
Yes.
a review if you enjoy it. That helps us a lot. And we'll see you next time.
Peace out.
Bye.